I am Jim Collison, and this is the Clifton Strengths Podcast, Season 3, recorded on February 16th, 2024. In this Clifton Strengths podcast series, we'll look at how to feel more energized and motivated at work, one theme at a time. And today's theme is input. If you're listening live, love to have you join us in chat. Or if you're listening after the fact, you can send us your questions in an email, coaching@gallup.com. Dr. Jaclynn Robinson is our host today. She works as a senior learning and development consultant. Join me for season 1 and season 2 of the Clifton Strengths podcast, where we looked at well-being at work in season 1 and the Clifton Strengths role-based reports, which are still doing gangbusters, by the way. For season 2,
Nice.
Jaclynn, always great to be with you. Welcome back.
Thank you.
We
Let's do
are,
this.
yeah, let's do it indeed. We are
This
talking
is
this season
fun.
about bringing energy to work with your themes, energy and motivation. Today, we're talking about input, and let's get to the individual first. What are some ways an individual with input can feel more energized by focusing on their basic needs?
Digging into your arsenal of articles, case studies, podcasts, best practices. I know you've got it. So, all those resources you filed away in order to share out relevant information, find them. Find those articles or those case studies or podcasts that would support you and likely your partners as well, especially if you're working on a group project or a group task.
I heard two things from you in there, and with input, I think one of them, the energy is, again, we're thinking about bringing energy, bringing motivation, is in the collection point, right?
Hmm.
Bringing it in. I have all these things. It makes us feel good. It makes us feel prepared. It makes us feel ready when we've got those kinds of things available. But I don't think we should miss on the fact that it also equally feels good to share those things back out, right?
Yes.
To hand them out, to give them away. When someone says, you know what I really need right now? I could have used a V8, and you're like, I actually have one of those, and I'll give it to
Well,
that.
yeah,
Not that they
right.
sponsored this show or anything like that, but you know what I mean. So it's both the act of taking and giving in that. I don't know. What would you add to that?
I think you summed it up. It's the who I want to acquire the information and then I want to give it away.
Yeah, yeah.
And what better time than when you're starting to think about your key responsibilities or priorities to say, okay, let me look through my storage of artifacts, so to speak, and find what's going to be applicable here for myself. And hey, it's probably going to be useful for others that are on the same, doing the same responsibility or working on the same project.
I also think the themes around it have, maybe have an influence, not maybe, probably do have an influence on
Mm-hmm.
how that input is both taken in and goes out. So input strategic may have different systems than input in election or input
Mm-hmm.
maximizer, right? And so I think there's as you look at, because that the sheer idea of collecting or bringing in or categorizing or whatever, however that is, doesn't have to be physical. It can be mental, can be, it can be digital, right? From that
Yeah,
perspective. Let's talk about
for sure.
what are some ways an individual with input can feel more energized by focusing on their individual strength and development. I alluded to that a little bit, but what do you think?
Thinking about issues, workplace topics, or even a skill that supports your role or career journey. Once you've identified what it is that's giving you energy, where can you get the information? And then dig into the information. But afterwards, just to fulfill your love of sharing information, consider the right audience that would appreciate what you've learned and then share
Mm.
away. So spread the wealth of knowledge.
Yeah, it's, spread the wealth. I love that concept, is the me versus we.
Hmm.
I think that the early input can be collecting for collecting's sake. I've got these things. I
Yes.
know these things. I've organized these things, whatever that looks like, right? The
Hmm.
we is then how do I make others better? How do I provide? How can I give it back? How can I give it out? How can I give it away? How can it be used in a way for people that are better? We'll talk about that a little bit more with the manager, but what are
Yeah.
some ways an individual with input can feel more energized by building partnerships and finding purpose? Again, I might have given away the answer there a little bit, but finding purpose in their roles.
It's good. I think we could layer on what you said, where they're using it with intention. So you do have a lot of information that's stored away. And rather than disperse it in a generalized kind of fashion where you're just throwing stuff out there, think about where your team could benefit from a subject matter expert. You might have a lot of information about one particular topic that's going to be more beneficial than just giving everything away. And then decide on whether it's something like a monthly meeting providing that information, or maybe the team has an alternative method in mind that would work best. They want the information placed on a Google Drive, or they want it on Microsoft Teams. But based on what would be beneficial, how would they then like to receive it, so that you're using your craft or talent of input in a way that's going to work best for everybody.
Yeah, I think asking those questions so sometimes you've been in this situation where, and I think I've actually done this to people before, where they ask for some advice on some things, or, hey, do you have? And I'm like, blah, 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 blah,
Sure, take it all.
You can hear the
Sky's
beeper on
the
the
limit.
truck backing up as I'm getting ready to jump on them, right? Which is okay, right? I mean, I might have those things available or whatever, but from a most helpful standpoint, it might being able to deliver exactly what's needed, exactly at the right time, with exactly the right volume, and not loudness. Although it can be that way too, but in the consistency of what they need at the time, right? To be able to fulfill their mission or purpose. I know it's great. My father-in-law had 900 baby jar bottles of screws in his garage. Sure, there was
Wow.
some input there, right? And
Yeah.
I could say, like, you know what I really need, and he was already moving, like, keep talking. I know I've got one of these, right? And
Ah.
that's a physical example, but think about some of those things in partnerships of information that may be needed just in time in a situation that's happening, to say, well, hey, I read this book, or I saw this thing and they tried this. Have you tried that, type deal? So love that with the individual. Let's think about the manager. How can a manager with input support others with their basic needs?
Well, rather than give out information your team might find relevant, gather their feedback by survey, email, focus groups, team meeting. Um, Choose your own adventure to ask them what information or artifacts they would like to have in support of their work. So then you can give them the right information versus all the information that might not be applicable or something they feel they need.
Yeah, asking the questions. We're back to that, right? Of
Yes.
saying, hey, when have you, like, what do you need and when? Or
Hmm.
what have been some situations where someone has given you information, advice, whatever that is, right? That's been really helpful. I think that's from a management perspective, I actually think that's um, a harder nut to crack, if we can use that analogy, than I think some people think, because you've really got to spend some time listening to what the other person needs in this,
Hmm.
right? So you can deliver that, whatever it is, in the time that they need it. I don't know. Any thoughts on that?
That's a really good call out, especially for this theme, because the energy is in giving out information physically, or you're sharing your ideas or
Yeah.
thoughts. So it might be hard for a moment, or it might take some time for you to pause and not be listening to talk, but you're
Mhm.
truly listening to hear what they have to say.
Yeah.
So global listening might be that piece that you're focused on, of let me truly listen to what it is so I can ask the right follow-up question.
Well, on the other side of that too is not overwhelming with
Hmm.
with that information, right? Of saying, hey, we've just got so much time. We need to move on. You can't get it all from me. I
Yes.
I remember one time I went in, and I don't have high input, but I think is a good example of it, where I went in to I got the opportunity to speak, and I was supposed to speak about 25 minutes, and I went a full 55. And
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
and it just felt so good. I was just giving them what I was vomiting on them, everything I knew about everything. Yeah, a
Ah,
little bit of
living the
different
dream.
motivation, but that can happen, right, from an input standpoint. And
Mhm.
I remember afterwards, someone talked to me and they're like, yeah, less is better, actually." Uh, Ouch. Okay.
Lead with silence sometimes. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, lead with less, Jim. How can a
Oh, too
manager with
funny.
input help others feel seen, heard, and valued as an individual?
Ooh, this is where your input really comes in. I feel like those high in input have such a great memory. Keep track of the successes, the learnings, the hobbies, and the interests of each of your team members. That way, when you're in your one-on-ones with them, or you're doing some hallway walk and talks or virtual quick connects, you can use it as an opportunity to recognize those milestones or inquire more about some of their interests.
Yeah, it is one of those where we can, as a manager, I think we can collect information, facts, about people, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and remembering somebody's birthday,
Mm-hmm.
not good at it. This guy, not good at it. Remembering those special moments, those anniversaries, those things, those kinds of recognition that people like. I just
Yeah.
like folks with a high input can just do this. Can not all of
Yeah.
them, but can do this so well. It's I think one of those areas where they're like, I said that 3 years ago, and you
Mm-hmm. Yes.
talk about, talk about feeling seen and heard. If you said something 3 years ago and somebody remembered and then surprised you back with it, how
No
powerful is
kidding.
that, right? You have a
Yes.
listen, input people, you have a superpower there to be able to to possibly be able to recall that information or whatever about people. Those who are managers can do it really should and can do that really well in that light. And man, talk
Yeah.
about being heard. Yeah. How can a manager with input build trust, inspire, and deepen team collaboration and community?
Each quarter, bring those team memories that you've stored away into a team meeting. And it's more specific here. So recall those team victories,
Yeah.
powerful partnerships, any adversities that the team overcame. And you're bringing that energy and enthusiasm to the team at the end of each quarter, which can establish a really positive mindset and just boost their morale as you start diving into the next quarter's goals or the next quarter's key priorities.
How do you think when we think about it building trust
Hmm.
specifically? I don't know if I didn't prep you for this question, but I'm just going to throw it out there. When we think about building trust, how does that recall, do you think, build trust in a team when a manager does bring those things back?
Um, I think one thing we talk about with trust is being candid and being vulnerable. I think it highlights that candidness that a manager can have to say, "Oh, we had this adversity. You all overcame this challenge.
Mhm.
I so appreciate the work that you've put into it, the talents that you brought to the table." You're helping them feel seen. And when they feel seen, invisible, and celebrated, that's going to deepen their level of trust and
Yeah,
rapport that they would have with you as a manager.
yeah, yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, it's a really, I think in team situations, it's a really, really important. Yeah, I miss on this constantly. Input's pretty low for me, and it is one of those areas I wish I could pull back. I usually have to rely on someone else in a team to say, I
Mhm.
have to build a system to say, okay, we're going to remember these things. Or I have to remind myself of them all the time, talk about them all the time. So I make sure
Yeah.
they're front of mind for me as well. So just some tricks I do to
Yes.
fake input. Final question as we kind of bring this in for a landing How can a manager with input support the growth of each team member?
Feel like this would be your joy as a manager. Listening to what team members are excited to learn about, and then you provide them with resources or recommendations. But before providing the resources or the recommendations, ask them how they want to develop. Is it through mentorship? And if it is, do they already have somebody in mind? If it's a skill set they want to learn, what's their preferred learning style? So before just jumping in, ask a couple of additional questions just so you can help them sort through what's what, and you're providing the right individualized resources based on their
Mhm.
needs.
I know of a Gallup manager who has input developer, and
Hmm. Oh,
he knows
wow. It's a
every
good one.
single thing that's going on around him and for his people and in the community or even virtually. And
Hmm.
we turned that into like a newsletter, into a monthly newsletter. We provided it for everybody to kind of say,
It's
from a
awesome.
developer's mindset, not software development, but I mean, actual just develop it. These are for software developers, but um, that idea of passing that on, not even to just his team, but the teams around him as well, and always thinking about that's where I think those other themes around it may have some influence on the way it comes together. And I think the
Hmm.
key is, how does it work best for you? If you're a manager or individual contributor of high input, how is it working best for you? Where are you seeing the most success with it? Jaclynn, take a
Yeah.
second and wrap this up for us.
Yeah, I would say, pros of input that we love when we work with individuals with input is the level of helpfulness that you provide. You've got people's backs because you've got the information or the resources needed. And that allows them to remove that barrier or frustration that's getting in the way of their success or their performance or their learning. It's a beautiful thing. Lean into it because it does help people feel seen and heard and helped whenever you give out resources, depending
Yeah.
whether it's physical, mental, etc. The caveat is, and you brought this up, Jim, and I think it's a good one for input. Just spend a little extra time listening before providing information so you can make sure you're really cultivating that information in a way that's going to be fruitful for the individual. And then
Yeah.
it doesn't become input overload.
Love it. Love it. Well, with that, we'll remind everyone to take full advantage of all the resources. Speaking of input, all the resources we have available on Gallup Access. Head out, you can head out, log in, or head over to gallup.com. There's a search button up there. Put in the theme name, put it input, and all the resources we have available will be there for you to consume, including 7, 6, 7, 8 seasons of this theme-based information. You could, yeah, sorry, don't go yet. We still got to finish this. So for coaching, master coaching, or become a Gallup certified strengths coach, you can send us an email, coaching@gallup.com. I can help you do that. If you want to join us for the 2024 Gallup at Work Summit, we'd love to have you do that. Plans are shaping up for that now, and now would be a good time, virtual or in person, to join us. Chances are, if this is after the fact, which for some of you it will be, I bet we're doing something right now that you can join us for. Head out to gallupatwork.com and get the information today. Stay up to date, you input friends, on all the Gallup webcasts by joining us on our Facebook and LinkedIn groups. You can find us just about everywhere by searching Clifton Strengths. And if you enjoyed it, we'd ask you to share it, subscribe to it, whatever you need to do to make sure you're always in the know. Thanks for coming out. If you joined us live, stay around for a tiny bit of a mid show. With that, we'll say goodbye, everybody.